against the spirit of the TRIPS agreements, and therefore it is something negative in a treaty obligation that has been violated by the developed country. Now, if we look back to this specifically, the public health consideration and the public policy consideration within the TRIPS agreement, we see Article 7 and 8 of the TRIPS agreement specifically mention about the societal concern and public health concern. So therefore, any act by the member state which violates this obligation, in my opinion, it's a kind of a negative treaty obligation, and violation of the negative treaty obligation is also a violation, and therefore that should not be allowed. And under the TRIPS agreement, we have seen that we do not have the positive treaty obligation, but we have the negative treaty obligation. However, if you think about the other legal regime, for example, if you think about the international human rights framework. So in international human rights framework, for example, ICESCR, where we have a positive treaty obligation. How? Because Article 2.1 of the treaty of this covenant is specifically mentioned that the obligation by individual and through international cooperation and assistance. So here we see this phase, international assistance and the cooperation, meaning that we have a kind of a international human rights obligation that is the global obligation. Now, how this human rights relevant to the COVID vaccine? Article 12.2c and Article 12.2d, you can see in the screen, is relevant because of the prevention, treatment, and the control of the pandemic or endemic, or because of the creation of a condition which will provide the medical service to all the citizens as a part of the human rights, as a part of their utilizations of the human rights. So we can argue from this perspective, in my opinion, that there is a positive treaty obligation, and that is something basically applicable in this regard. So that leads us to philosophical point of view. If we think about a philosophical point of view, that whether there is any utilitarian approach to it, we understand that Jeremy Bentham's approach is that greatest good for the greatest number. So that the main argument is that legal mechanism should be framed in this way that will provide greatest good for the greatest number of people. Now we see in this approach, everyone's good is equally important. So it is not the lives of the rich people is important. It is also lives of the poor people is also important. It is not the developing country. It is also in the developed country. So for the sake of the all, we need to provide the vaccine to all. So now in this, in the utilitarian approach also, we see a global solidarity in terms of providing global, COVID-19 vaccine. However, think about the natural law theory. In the natural law theory, there is one of the key arguments is that law must pass a test of the morality. So we understand, if you think about that the global vaccinating program right now we have, if it is restricted by the patent or any other legal framework, the argument obviously would be that is not, that will not pass the test of the morality. In that sense, I argue from the natural law theory perspective, from the moral connotation, this restriction is not permitted. So therefore, there is also a legal obligation, moral obligation we can resort from the utilitarian perspective, from the natural law theory perspective. However, from these two perspectives, if I conclude what we have right now, we have one of the debating area that has been debated for long and still also not settled yet. That is conflicting norms. If we see international IP law, there is no positive obligation, yes. If we see international human rights law, there is a specific positive obligation. Now there would be a kind of a discussion whether these two norms are conflicting to each other. In my opinion, solutions to this conflicting approach is also within the system. How? Because I argue, for example, human rights should be prevailed in the sense that TRIPS agreement and the Doha Declaration internalization of the human rights within this framework, because Article 7.8 of the TRIPS agreement consider about the public health and the societal interest. Doha Declaration is specifically mentioned about the public health concern. So within the intellectual property regime, there is a human rights consideration. So therefore, I see that human rights should prevail here. And also, we also see that limiting IP because of the human rights consideration. Just think about WTO panel report of the plain packaging, where the WTO said that the Australian plain packaging tobacco control mechanism was okay and was fine, incompatible with the trademark law, because the restriction of the trademark law is absolutely fine. Why? Because of the bigger concern. What is the bigger concern here? The controlling the tobacco and public health considerations. So we see in this situation, WTO has restricted intellectual property law for the sake of the human rights. Therefore, I argue here the vaccine patent can be restricted because of the human rights consideration, lives of the people. On the broader public policy IP, yes, we see this one. So my argument is basically is that this is the human rights and the intellectual property law can be seen as ship passing at the night. Because of the darkness, they cannot see each other, they might collide. We need to give them the light so that they can, by the true interpretation, so that they do not collide, so that they can complement each other. So this norm hierarchy can be resolved by this process. Now, coming back to my second question. My second question is that whether intellectual property waiver will resolve this problem. One of the argument is that, the legal problem versus factual problem. So on the legal problem versus factual problem, the argument is, it is not the patent or the IP that has created this problem. Rather, it is the shortage of the raw materials. It is the insufficiency for production capacity. It is the complex manufacturing process of the vaccine. It is the basic problem. It is not the intellectual property problem. So therefore, if we waive the intellectual property, it will not, resolve the problem that we currently have. So my question is that, are there really any legal problem? Yes, answer is yes. How? Because legal complexity is a legal problem in terms of the compulsory licensing. Think about the secrecy of the patent application for 18 months. You don't know any information about the patent application. We don't know any information about the patent application. And therefore, manufacturing or other, innovation is not possible through this process. So therefore, this is a legal problem. What about the trade secret? Even if we waive the intellectual property, for example, you propose the intellectual property waiver, the companies will not disclose their trade secret. So they can remain this trade secret. This is also a problem, I think, with the legal problem. What about the regulatory approval of the biosimilar vaccine? Because vaccine, you see in the different countries, they have own regulatory approval process. So for the regulatory approval, they need the information, they need the data about the vaccine. If that is not rightly provided, that also create a kind of a legal problem for that. And also we understand the tested exclusivity also can create this problem. So in my opinion, it is not only the factual problem, it is also the legal problem that has been creating the barrier. The question is, one of the opposing argument about this IP waiver is that it will negatively impact on the future innovation. The answer is, this is a complex issue. Why? Because they consider that the fresh investment are needed for innovation, and the traditional innovation incentive theory is applicable here. And if we now waive the IP, then it will create a bad precedent, and it will negatively impact the innovation policy in the next pandemic. The answer to this concern is very simple. What we can say about this answer about this problem? The problem, we must think about in this way: the innovation policy, the traditional innovation policy that we have, whether that is really suitable for this perspective. Because you see, the global vaccine innovative companies, they had advance payment from the public money. Now you have advance payment from the public money, you have the grant, you have all the money, and then you invented it, and you now say that this is invented because of the traditional innovation policy. No, because the traditional innovation policy is not based on the expenditure of the public money, or is not based on the early purchase, or is not based on the grant. Rather, you invest and then you innovate. So in this aspect, I think traditional innovation theory is not applicable. Another issue we must think about is that what we need in this context. Do we need allocative efficiency or the dynamic efficiency in terms of the innovation and IP? Whether human lives can be measured with the money? Answer is very simply no. In this context, we are not in the traditional innovation policy theory. So therefore, in my opinion, the future innovation policy argument is not justified in that sense. Now, another argument was that the vaccine supply, this IP waiver would create kind of would not be able to reduce the price of the vaccine. Why? Because the vaccine supply is a complex process. Production of the vaccine is a complex process that will cost that needs so much cost, and therefore it will not reduce the cost. Rather, it will create some generic company who will make the profit. The answer to this problem might be is that after if it is a competition, price competition after the IP waiver, because if it is not IP, then the competition among the pharmaceuticals would be price. So based on the price, when it is based on the price, there will be lower price, because all the companies will try to find out a price by which they can compete in the market. So in my opinion, this argument perhaps is not sustainable, because I think if IP is waived, there will be price competition. With the price competition, there will be a tendency to lower the price. Now, there is an argument relating to this one, that how this waiver will be implemented. Even if waiver is accepted by the WTO, what would be the process by which this waiver will be implemented? To answer this question, I have looked for the previous case law from the WTO, and I have seen the two case law where this suspending of the intellectual property obligation is done by the WTO. But we must remember, these two cases has been done in a different context. What is the different context? That was based on the bilateral context, and that was based on the retaliation. This one is not the bilateral context, it is a multilateral context, and the second, it is based on the public interest. However, within the WTO jurisprudence, my argument is that within the WTO jurisprudence, there is a process by which that suspension of intellectual property can be done. And therefore, if the WTO adopted a proposal, decision for the suspension of intellectual property, if any country does not follow this proposal, there is a retaliation process in the WTO. So it is not an argument that how it is implemented. It is an argument that if it is not implemented by the member state, there is a mechanism within the TRIPS and WTO by which the retaliation can be done. So therefore, there is an effective, legal order is there. So this argument is not perhaps also sustainable in that sense. Now, in the last stage, I would say there is I argue that the truth lies between the two. How? Because there is an extreme view, we need waiver, complete waiver. There is an extreme view, we don't want to give complete waiver of IP. So what would be the solution? The solution, in my opinion, is not purely legal, it is also practical. How? Because within the TRIPS flexibility, the member states of the WTO should be given enough freedom and enough leeways to ensure that the TRIPS flexibilities are working. For example, Article 66, Article 31, 31Bs, or National Security Concern Article, that can be used in this context. So there should not be anything that other members is creating a problem in this regard. What would be the practical issue? The practical issue is that transfer of technology, know-how, and the global partnership. The problem, very simple, is that we understand it is a common problem, global problem. We cannot resolve this problem without having a global solidarity. So that's why my proposal, my argument is that no one is safe until everyone is safe. This is the real premise that WTO and the global community should concern about it. And in my practical opinion, that the more transparency is needed in terms of voluntary licensing, in terms of the test data sharing, in terms of the relaxing the bilateral obligation, and of course I support the patent or IP waiver as a principle of proportionality, and that means if we cannot have the legal solution or the practical solution, IP should be waived. And the issue, in my opinion, if the IP is waived, it is not a bad policy option. In my opinion, pharmaceutical companies have been criticized because of their high price and because of their high range of profits. This may help them to recover their images. How? Because branding, because people will see that yes, pharmaceutical companies have played a big role in an IP waiver proposal of the in the terms of the COVID vaccine. So in that context, I consider that this is the solution of this problem is not solely based on the legal issue. It is also based on the practical issues. So that is the solution. This is how I see this issue. And thank you very much for listening me. I would be happy to share some of my opinion that I could not share within this time frame. In the question answer maybe, or the discussion, maybe we can have also some kind of discussion on this aspect. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much for kindly listening to me.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Karim, for your presentations towards our topics today. For any of you, to all participants that want to ask a question, you can directly ask in the comment sections. We'll wait, I think, for about 1 to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Karim, maybe since everyone's still not asking a question, perhaps too surprised by the content that you have delivered. It's very, very thick and fruitful. I guess it's a good terminology for your presentation. It's very fruitful. I want to ask that you were saying that there are retaliation about this patent waiver. I mean, for this situation, I guess India and Indonesia are facing probably the same problem now, a similar problem. That isn't it? Maybe is it? Do you have any practical suggestion? That I was thinking that maybe we are kind of too late now to understand this this issue. We're kind of a bit too late, like in Brazil and Indonesia now we are kind of too late. And like, what should we do, or what kind of like immediate action that needed by Indonesian government, since maybe this seminar was are witnessed by government. Well, I would like to thank you for the present, Mrs. Ranti. She was here. I don't know if she's still here or not. She was messaging me that she's also think that your presentation is very, very good, extremely good and important. And she was telling me that she wants to consider to ask later on, because she will meet government on June 22, the 20th of June, to discuss about this as well, because the social behavior in India and Indonesia also have similarity. It's so not similar with Germany, because the citizen, the government, maybe they are so ready. Maybe this question as the opening, maybe the other people will ask more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My position was that, I mean, I tried to focus on basically what are the negative arguments or opposing arguments in terms of vaccine, I mean, IP waiver relating to the vaccine. One of the arguments is that it is not clear how the IP waiver, if it is even adopted by the WTO, it is not clear how it would be implemented. So because of the implementation challenges, the opponent of the IP waiver proposals, what they say is that it is better not to have the IP waiver. Rather, we should go for the flexibility that we have within the existing framework. This is their proposal. But my answer was that implementation challenges they are now currently saying is actually not the true. Why? Because if the declaration is adopted or any instrument is adopted by the WTO, then if any member state within the WTO does not follow that or does not comply with that mandate, then within the WTO, there is a complaint procedure by which the retaliation can be done against that member state. So effectively, the legal regime is there. If it is adopted, if any country, for example, country A, is not willing to follow that declaration or decision, then there is a mechanism within the WTO to comply, to force that country to comply with it by the process of retaliation. So their argument is that implementation is a problem. It is not a problem. So basically, in terms of the IP waiver, implementation would not be a problem. But however, it is obviously would be the member state how they are going to implement it, because all the member states are not in the similar position or same position. So they will adopt their local approach, how they are going to implement this one, IP waiver one. My answer would be about what the government should do. The first, you are correct on the sense that we are always not proactive, rather we are always reactive. Because when something happens, then we react. We do not, adopt the policy options well beforehand. This is one of the common issue or the common challenges in the developing countries or LDCs. The problem, as I see, is basically it's a bigger theoretical debate and also practical debate. Within the global intellectual framework, I consider there is a discrimination within the framework. So intellectual property as a broader framework does not treat innovation equally. For example, country A, which does not have infrastructure for innovation, and country B, which does, intellectual property does not create both of them, treated them inequality, in my opinion. So what is basically problem is that it's our innovation problem, first of all. We need to consider about the local innovation. We need to consider about the well management of the local innovation. That is the main problem. We generally depended upon the developed countries by saying that, okay, this is how we want this IP waiver and all that, but still we need to consider ourselves to our own local industry, own local innovation, how we can develop that. But now in the context of this COVID-19, as we have seen this issue, I see that probably if any country, developing country or LDC, is going to is able to reproduce the medicine or something which is protected by the intellectual property or something, but it is, in my opinion, it is very unlikely. But if it is, then it is unlikely for the developed country or company going to complain, because they are because of the public perception and all that. I don't think they are going to complain it, but at the same time we know that we don't have that capacity. So one of the proposal would be is to negotiate with the companies for the first hand. Try to negotiate to have a reasonable deal with the companies to create a vaccine manufacturing. One of the proposal, I think this is the proposal, but it has not been able to, done by the developing countries, is that some of the developing countries, for example, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, and many more, they can join together and set up joint manufacturing projects. This can be done beforehand. I think this should have been done before. They can join together and initiate a joint manufacturing process by which they can produce the vaccine for themselves, and then they can distribute among themselves. But we are overly dependent upon the Western companies and Western countries. That does not help. I think that has created a problem more. And Of course, the only thing is, I mean, another issue is that making a kind of a moral high ground, because if by the COVAX or any other projects, if the developed country gives some vaccines to the developing country, it is equal to position that they hold a moral high ground and they are giving some kind of grant to the developing country. This is also, I think, is not the right approach to deal with the process, because we have been seeing this. And for future, I mean, for future, I would say the issue might be the creating a global platform by all developing countries or LDCs for the future pandemic, and they should contribute regularly. And if there is any pandemic, and there will be a innovation and invention for the vaccine, and then they can share that vaccines to those countries. This is the common approach I think they should follow. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the answer from Mr. Karim to Mr. Christian. I think there is several questions in the comment sections from Said Hossein Sarwar. Mr. Karim, would you please shed a light on the matter that how the dichotomy of vaccine politics and vaccine politics can play its role? Thank you. Great presentations.
Yeah, this is an important issue. Just think about. I mean, I have shown you the data. Just think about India. As I argued, India is supposed to be the global vaccine manufacturer, one of the top global vaccine manufacturers, because they have manufactured the vaccine and they have distributed to the vaccines to the many other countries. But think about their own population. First of all, they have not been able to provide the vaccines to their own population. This is one of the criticism. Now, the question remains why they have manufactured the vaccine and exported it and also give grants to some of the countries. This is one of the policy that they have in terms of the vaccine politics. And also think about the United States. Now they are saying that we are supporting the IP waiver, and at the same time, now they're saying that they are in fact they're giving some of the vaccines to the developing countries. How? After vaccinating their people, they thought that yes, 70% is already done, 80% is already done. So now we don't need the vaccine. Now we can have the media coverage and all that by saying this. Yes, the developing countries are getting vaccine. That's okay. But you understand, we need to also understand this is not the benevolence, or this is not the something that we are thinking about. Rather, it is a part of the global vaccine politics in terms of that also I consider. One of our concern also is that why they are not willing to IP waiver. For example, if they consider that even if IP is waived, you will not be able to produce the vaccine because it is a practical problem, manufacturing problem. If they think that is the correct approach, then if they should waive the intellectual property and say, okay, we waive the intellectual property, now is up to you how you manufacture. But they are not willing to do so. Why? Because I consider that because it will create a precedent for the future pandemic, for the future vaccine, then people will refer to it and then say, yeah, there should not be no patent at all to this vaccine. So I think therefore that reason, for the bigger concern, they are not doing it. So it's also part of not the part of the legal regime. I consider it is also part of the politics. It is also part of the pharmaceutical company's interest. And it is also part of the global domination in terms of global domination. As I considered that if I give you something, I always hold the high moral ground. So now they are saying we are not waiving it, but we are giving you, okay, take the 2,200 or 2,000 or something like that vaccines to any other country. So this is where I see this politics. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I think that's already answered the questions. And then the next question is from Riyad Mahmoud. Mr. Karim, does the international IP laws impose any kind of obligation on patent holders to share the formula of medicines with LDC country companies to protect the life of citizens of the LDC countries itself? Yeah, that's the questions.
That's the question. That's the unfortunate answer is that no. This is the unfortunate answer. Why? Because one of the theoretical regime that says about the intellectual property patent, the social contract theory. So it says that the patentee gets a patent for 20 years for a limited period of time for the disclosure of the knowledge. So patentee will only disclose the knowledge as a form of the patent, but I mean the formula, all the things in the patent application, we see there is a strategic points. What is the strategic points? Some of the issues are not being disclosed in the patent application, rather protected by for example, know-how, for example, trade secret, for example, data exclusivity. So there is a strategical position. By using the intellectual property, they do that. So my answer would be, unfortunately, international intellectual property regime does not positively require to share it, but give kind of, exclusivity. At the same time, theoretically, it is for the sharing the knowledge, but actually, whole sharing of the knowledge is not there. How? Because as I told, because of the trade secret, know-how, and other aspects, they keep those aspects secret. And by keeping those aspects secret, actually pharmaceutical company, they do the business. And unfortunate answer is no. Not at least under the existing framework. And obviously, there is a huge debate that how intellectual property regime, international intellectual property regime should be refined and should be designed. As I told you, that there is a huge discriminatory approach within the intellectual property regime, because they do not, treat equally, because they presume we are all equal. We can innovate, but we don't have the capacity to innovate. All are equally, we don't have that capacity.
Okay, and then coming to next questions from Habibullah. I might have missed this part. Mr. Karim, will it be possible for developing countries where quality control may not be supervised to produce vaccines even if the IP rights are waived?
Yes, this is another concern, and this is a genuine concern that what would be the quality control issue that might happen if the IP waiver is accepted. And also there is an argument that probably there might be less quality vaccine manufactured and given to the people, and there might be black market also. These are some of the arguments that have been given by the opposing who oppose this IP waiver. The answer to this question would be, it is up to the domestic legal framework to deal with this issue. For example, in every country there is a test. There is a body which control this approach for the approval, quality control, and all that for the approval of a certain medicine in the market, in the domestic market. So it is mainly based on the domestic approach. So I would say it is up to the national government to deal with these issues. Even if IP is waived, if it is not taken properly, if it is not dealt with properly, there might be a problem because it is a public health issue, public health crisis. Even then, if the less quality vaccine is produced by manufactured by any developing countries or LDC, and if it is if it is exported to another country, then that common solidarity obligation would not be there, and there will be I think there will be a problem. Yes, yeah.
Okay. Moving into next question, because I think there's 15 minutes left for the Q&A sessions. From Ms. Diana Arvastuti, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Karim. I would like to ask about the people that still resist the vaccine because some matters. Should the government put the panel for them, or should the vaccine factory disclosure their formula or not? That's the question.
What was the basic? I missed the question. Sorry.
Actually, Ms. Dian is asking about if someone in some country, for the example, in Indonesia, still resist the vaccine because some of matters, either they don't believe it or whatsoever. Should the government put the panel for them, and or should the vaccine factory disclosure their formula?
Yes. The answer to this question is basically there are two approaches. One approach is that yes, from the human rights consideration, freedom consideration, you need to give the people freedom that whether they will accept the vaccine or not, right? This is on the legal premise. And at the same time, if you think about we need to keep people safe. From that aspects, we need to vaccinate more people. So there is a dichotomy we see. But yet, I see in this way that the crisis right now we have is not only a public health crisis. It also a crisis relating to the other area. For example, livelihood. Think about this issue, the people who are the worker, migrants, working in another country. If they are not vaccinated, they cannot go to that country and they cannot work there. So it is also for the purpose of the economic issues, we need to have this. And what I consider, think about it. Now, I think after certain level of vaccination, the developed country are going to close the door. If you do not have the vaccine, then certificate, then you cannot travel. I think that can happen in future. So from considering that aspects, the more information should be given to the people about the safety and security of the vaccine, so that people are interested to get the vaccine, not only because of the health, saving their health, but also because of the financial matters of the countries and also economic conditions of the countries. I believe the thing that we are now facing, there are problems with the lives and all that, but it's coming. Economic problem is coming within 2-3 years. It is coming. Why? Because most of the developed country will vaccinate most of their population, and then they are going to close the door. If you do not have the vaccine, you cannot travel. And another issue is that even then there is a politics. What is the politics? They will only accept those vaccines which they recognize. And obviously we understand they will not, for example, right now they don't accept the Chinese vaccine, or some of the countries do not accept the Russian vaccines. This is their part of their politics. But in my answer to this question, my opinion would be yes, the government should not force the people. I think government should pursue the people. This is the right approach, because in the freedom and the legal paradigm, we always give the opportunity of the people to decide what is best for them, to pursue them, the safety and security, disclose them all the information relating to the vaccine, and then try to vaccinate people as much as possible.
Thank you. Another question from Ms. Disney Santika. Thank you for your presentation. Would you like to elaborate your point of view concerning the possibility and challenges of global patent pools in mitigating the crisis, considering recently the second wave only happened in several countries, while in other countries, mostly developed countries, COVID condition is relatively under control? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very good question. In terms of the global patent pool, we have seen in the WTO there is a mechanism. In the WHO, they have created a mechanism for, voluntary mechanism for this pooling system for all the information relating to the intellectual property issues. But unfortunately, we have seen that there is the companies and the states, mostly developed countries, are less interested to, put their information over there. Now, I am really not sure that whether the companies would be interested to pool their patents. I'm not sure about that. But what I was considering that the developing countries, they should create kind of a joint manufacturing systems, and not by alone. They should create a kind of a solidarity. And then they can, in a joint way, they can negotiate with the companies with the reasonable terms. If the terms is not reasonable, terms and conditions of the agreement is not reasonable, if it is something that is restricting, obviously in that sense they can argue and they can object. In that process, I see there is a possibility of a faster vaccine manufacturing and for the reason. But I am not sure whether the voluntary patent pool would be possible, because I don't see the companies are interested. Company would be interested for the voluntary patent pooling system. Rather, they would be interested individually in negotiation because they want to do the business as well. So I don't see problem with the business, but I see that if negotiation capacity, is higher by the developing country, more countries, then there is a possibility they can share the cost. They can share the manufacturing and other related cost. In that process, I consider that there's a possibility of joint production and all that. But in the patent pool system, I don't see the possibility, because the companies are not interested in that sense. Yes.
Okay, I think that's answered the questions. And then coming to next question is from Ms. Jemima Islam. Sir, can you share your opinion how the developing countries can reshape or use this IP right in a positive way to mitigate these problems in the future?
This is a kind of a common concern all the time we have. One of the problem, as I told you before, in relations to the question of the dean, respected dean, is that we react rather than we proact. So we do not proactively take the decision, policy adoption, rather we react after happening of something. So one of the proposal is right now under the WHO that creating a global framework for the pandemic, vaccine, innovation, and all this mechanism, creating a global framework. There has been a proposal by the developing country and the least developing countries, mostly. And in my opinion, this is the best way. How? Because, for example, in this process, we all know about the Gates Foundation, about the investment, the grant and investment in the public health issues, right? We know about the one of the rice that has been invented in Indonesia, related by the investment of the Gates Foundation. So this is, and they waive the IP in the sense they are saying that we are not going to enforce the intellectual property. So in my opinion, if the WHO or something in the global platform, that must create a kind of a framework, global framework. Right now it is in the negotiation, global framework, where every country, according to their ability, would contribute. And then if there is there is a pandemic preparedness legal order. So there will be always research and develop research on the basis that what would be the next pandemic? Is there a possibility of having next pandemic? What would be the next kind of public health issue? There will be research on that, and they will try to find out proactively find out the vaccine and all that preventive measures on that. So this is the one solution by the process of intellectual, one legal framework, at the same time practical approach, they can mitigate this issue. Otherwise, I see if we always rely on the Western framework and Western country, and at the end of the day, I don't see there is a solution, because you will be hostess all the time in the hands of few countries. And this is the problem, I think.
Okay, coming into next questions is from Miss Yovita Gisela. She's asking about that we all know there are some different types of vaccines, right? In these conditions like AstraZeneca, Sinovac, Moderna, and etc. But in this case, some countries only accepting specific kind of countries. For example, some countries only accepting specific facts like Sinovac if you want to apply a jobs there. But it's not fair enough to someone that already get another kind of vaccines. So what the government can do to mitigate this problem in the future, because it's not really fair enough.
That's the question, and probably I have somehow partially answered it. I said it because it is about the politics of vaccine politics, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing the government can do is the negotiation. So we understand in international relations, it is not only the law that plays the role, but it is also the politics and the negotiation that also plays the role. In my opinion, the country has only one option, that is negotiation with another country, that why that is not mutually would not be accepted. And of course, I mean, I have the friends who vaccinated in China and traveled to Munich. Now they are saying that we are not accepting your vaccine. You have to be vaccinated again here. Now it is a practical issue, and she is telling me that I don't know the consequence. Why? Because I have taken one vaccine. Now, if I also take another vaccine, what would be the consequence in my body? I don't know. So whether there be reaction of this issue. So it is a practical problem. Yes, I see this is a part of the larger politics. Why? Because if you recognize the vaccine, then in the market, in your market, it will enter, right? So they will compete in the market. Probably this is the reason they are restricting it. Only the reason they are restricting it. And also, this pandemic is also not about the only about the IP and the vaccine issue. This pandemic is also about taking a global supremacy. Who is taking the global supremacy? Because everyone thought China has been, is going to be down, but China has probably tackled the pandemic in the right way. And European countries are now facing this problem, and they are now competing to each other. And this is the problem, I think. So only solution, maybe the negotiation. And I don't see in the multilateral forum, yes, in the WTO, in the WHO, yes, they can raise the issue. Even in the United Nations, they can raise the issue. But, the complex procedure, probably that is not going to happen. Yeah.
Okay. Coming to the next questions from Sahrir Rahman Shihab. Sir, if the developed country close their door in the future to help other countries, then how the local government can take any initiative to solve this issue? And if any country want to make other vaccine in their own country, then how they will get the permissions?
Yeah, I think that for the local countries is that we have a problem. I can assess my country of origin, that is Bangladesh. I can assess my country. I have seen the management was not the right from the very inceptions of the pandemic. I have seen that this is one of the problems. I see that local innovation, we do not encourage the local innovation. Even testing kits. For the testing kits and other, we put it into the huge administrative, process. And then in the administrative process, it takes long time to get approval and all that. I am not saying that we should not maintain the quality. Yes, we should. But at the same time, think about United States. They have approved the, market approval of the vaccine within shortest possible time in the history. They have done that. So why they have done that? They have done that only because they think about this is important, at least for the trial and error as well. So we have some data, and then we can think about that whether it is working or not. Whatever the testing kits, whatever the other, issues, the small technologies, they have given the market approval. Yes, go on to the market. But in our country, in other parts of the world, I have seen long administrative, process. And also the approach is such that how you can restrict. And in my opinion, perhaps in the most developing countries and least developing countries, there is also a huge domination by the conflict of interest by the owner of the pharmaceutical companies. So, for example, they don't want to come. They don't want to allow the competing pharmaceutical companies into the market. Probably that's why they lobby into the government, and there is a problem with this kind of corruption approach as well. So, in my opinion, the transparency is important, and the local encouragement of the local innovation is important, and negotiation with the foreign government is also important. But we don't have one way solution, that is magic solution. We have to take a lot of aspects and a lot of policy issues into the consideration to solve these issues. This would be my answer. Unfortunately, I cannot answer in one way. Not possible. Yeah.
Okay. Next question, actually is from me. I'm just curious that you're talking about a joint production from some developing countries to create some vaccine, right? But is it going to have some impacts towards like the trade secret or know-how protections towards the production of the vaccine itself? Yeah, that's for me. Thank you.
In my opinion, that for the future, right? So yes, for the future, that yes, it's a very important question. Just think about now. People are saying that if you miss the bus, first of all, when you miss the bus, because when you invested the money to the pharmaceutical company, you give the public money to the pharmaceutical company. At that point, you did not negotiate well. Now, who is the upper position? Pharmaceutical company is in the upper position. Think about, they have taken all the pre-order and all that. Now they are not giving you the vaccine, right? So now they are not giving you the vaccine. You are complaining why you are not giving give me the vaccine and all that, this issue and that issue. So the issue is that when you invested the money, the government and the public fund has been given to these pharmaceutical companies. At that point of time, the negotiation between these parties are not taken place. So rightly, in my opinion. So we have IP policy. As we know that every university, most of the developed countries university or developing country university, we have IP policy. Pharmaceutical companies also have the IP policy. What would be the, outcome in terms of the joint investment, in terms of what would be the IP, in terms of the joint investment, what would be the terms and conditions, who hold the patent, what would be the licensing, all that negotiation should be taken place beforehand, so that the investor or the public money who has given the public money, they are in a good position. So most of the cases, it is a lesson. One of the lessons from this COVID innovation policy is that we have not been able to negotiate with the pharmaceutical company in a right way. We have given the public money to them. Now we are in a bad position. Now we are negotiating. So to recover this problem, to come out of this problem, one of the solutions, as we discussed, that creating a global platform where everything would be pre-hand negotiated, and it will be clear that yes, there will be no issue relating to the trade secret. On other issue, yeah, that voluntary sharing of this trade secret, of course, with the reasonable terms and conditions, that should be taken place, I think, in terms of the future negotiation. So in the future negotiation, I think this is the lesson, this is the takeaway, and in the future, any project, this is the takeaway we should take into consideration. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think move to another question. I think there's 2 questions left from Mr. Christian Anderson again. I believe vaccine politics play its role in some way, like Germany choose different approach than USA that support LDC recently. What I don't understand is, or maybe what is the reason that probably affecting those different decisions?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question for me to answer, but when USA declared that, the Biden government declared that we are going to support the vaccine waiver, European Union sharply reacted. Why? Because the European Union considered that they had this partnership, right? That yes, we are not supporting this vaccine waiver. They sharply reacted because they consider perhaps, just think about, in the European Union, the level of vaccinating the people has not been taken place the way it has been taken place in the USA, right? So just to consider that aspect, practical aspects. Now, if USA thinks that my 80% of the population will be vaccinated by the end of this month or something like that, only 20% will be remaining, and I will have enough vaccine supply. Now I can waive, right? Now I can waive that, and now I can have a kind of a global image recovery. But what would be the position for the European Union? If they consider that only my 40% people are vaccinated, and probably I would have 50% vaccinated by the end of this month. Even then I have 50%. So I have a lot of demands for the vaccine for my domestic aspects. Now, should I support the waiver? No, I can't. Because if I support the waiver, then I have to, I mean, my internal market will be threatened. Then this is the position. In my consideration, perhaps this is the position, and for that reason, USA has taken an advantage and global branding by saying that, yes, I am supporting the vaccine waiver. But I talked to you that they are not supporting blindly. They're saying a negotiation. And remember, it is all for all of us to remember, one of the strategy in the international level is to delay the process. Delay. By what? By saying that let's negotiate. So in the name of the negotiation, you delay the process. When you delay the process, in the meantime, your own people are vaccinated. Now it is equal if you waive or not waive, right? It is equal. So this is the strategy I see. And the waiver proposal, I consider it is same strategy, is negotiation. And European Union has given counter proposal. Why? Because they believe that there will be another negotiation. In the process, they will take time. And at the end of the day, they will say, we adopted the waiver. But, in this process, who are the victims? The people from the least developing countries and developing countries, because lives are going, because there are a lot of people are dying there. And in my opinion, this is the strategy, and this is the strategic difference. And at the end of the day, probably we are going to have the waiver. But the question would remain that in the meantime, whether lots of people have been already died, because of our delay. That is a question. That is not a legal question. That is purely a moral question, that whether that should be the case. This is the reality, but what we can.
Okay. I think coming into last questions from Riyad Mahmoud. Should the theory of joint vaccine production by the LDC countries include the principle of shared responsibility for refugees, considering the Rohingya situation in Southeast Asia?
Yeah. I think for those people, there should be specific vaccine program, and I am sure that some of the project has been also already been taken place, and there will be. I consider, yes, they should be considered within the projects. Why? Because one of my concern, as I told, recently there was a publication in the Washington Post that whether we should give the shelter to the refugee, or whether we should give giving kind of a shelter which is like a jail to them for the Rohingya people also. So my position is that if it is no one is safe until everyone is safe, if it is the proposition, then everyone should be treated equally. In the Benthamian concept, the life of me is not higher than the life of you. The price of the life is equal. In that sense, poor, rich, whatever, refugee, non-refugee, whatever, all should be treated equally. However, in the COVID situation, we have seen the isolation. That isolation has been taking place like a jail. The migrants people are being isolated. Workers are being isolated. There have been huge criticism about the Singaporean approach to the migrants and the workers. And there have been criticism about the Rohingya refugees that are taken by the Bangladesh government, I would say, internationally. Of course, Bangladesh government has taken a lot of good initiatives in terms of giving the shelter to the Rohingya people. But at the same time, my opinion would be we should treat all the lives equally, all the life importantly, because all the lives matter.
Okay, I think all the question is already answered by you. we're coming into a closing sessions. Thank you, Mr. Karim, for really, really good presentations towards our topics today. Yeah, even though it's still an early morning there, but thank you for able to join our webinars today. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Karim also already answering the question with a really brief explanation to the importance of like the innovation policies, good negotiation between countries, and how the IP waivers will impact in further occasions. So before we all leave the meeting room, I would like to remind you to fulfill the form that already sent on our comment sections. And before we all leave in the meeting room also, let's take a picture together for documentation matters. And please kindly open your camera first. Okay, we're gonna wait for you. Please kindly open the camera for documentations. Buat teman-teman partisipan yang join bisa open kameranya, pihak panitia bakal sama-sama taking a picture ya. Oke, mulai dari slide pertama dulu ya, 1, 2, 3. Oke, next slide, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Fourth slide. Okay. Okay, I think we already finished the webinars for today. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Karim, and thank you so much to all participants that already giving a questions toward the comment sections. Terima kasih buat Bapak Ibu juga yang sudah menyempatkan untuk hadir pada siang hari ini. Terima kasih yang sudah memberikan pertanyaan. Thank you all for your attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed these webinar sessions. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karim.
Thank you, Mr. Karim. See you next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was my privilege and honor to be with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, moderator, and thank you all the organizing committee and also all the participants. It is amazing. So many participants. I think so many questions and queries. It was wonderful time. And also, I would like to thank and pay my gratitude to the respected and honorable dean for the kind invitation. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
I still owe you a trip in Bandung. You have to visit Bandung.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, before we leave the meeting room, we also from the committee will present the videos of Faculty of Law from our Tech Christian University. Thank you, Mr. Karim. See you next time.
Thank you.
Hello, Maranatha. It is not just about classes, books, and study. This is School of Life. It's about what we are craving for the future. It's about meeting new people and friends. Here, we learn from each other's experience, sharing and caring one another. The banter or even have arguments. But after that, we build emotional connection between each other. Preparing ourselves to be a better person. This is a place we can call it home. Our second home.